As I look out of my windows this morning, I'm beginning to be convinced that summer is over. It's not a bad day, that it's overcast and a little bit windy, and I guess it's introducing us gradually into what is yet to come throughout the rest of the year. And I was reminiscing this morning of Bank Holiday weekend back in August. What a wonderful time that was. Matthew and Ruth and the boys had gone off to Belgium for some days, and my other son, Peter, and his wife Tracy had come down from Yorkshire to keep an eye on the old man. On Bank Holiday Monday, we took a trip out to Stratford-on-Avon and found a nice free disabled car parking space that we could stay in for 3 hours. And so we went from there to this beautiful little riverside cafe where we indulged in cake and coffee, and then spent some time exploring different parts of the town, taking a nice long walk down beside the river. And then we decided we were in need of either an early lunch or a late lunch rather, or an early dinner. And we decided to try to find a place at a very nice restaurant that we know, and we decided if we could get a table at the water's edge rather than inside, then we would stop and eat there. And just as we arrived, the table became free, and so we sat down on the outside of the restaurant, again right next to the river. And as I sat and just looked around at the scenery, I was overwhelmed, and I was somewhat spiritually touched by the beauty of the setting. Just behind me was a weir, and the water running over the weir, it was a shallow weir. It wasn't a deep one, but the water running over the weir made this very loud and not unpleasant noise as it travelled downstream. And then the lights on the main part of the river, as the sun reflected on the water, was remarkable. It looked as if little lanterns were shining within the flow of the stream. And as I looked up, I noticed something I was going to say I'd never seen before, but I guess I must have seen before, but this is the first time I noticed it, that the lights in the river were being reflected in the leaves of the trees. And it looked as if the trees were alive with little lights travelling up and down them. And as I sat and looked, I thought, how mysterious and how marvellous this is. And it began to remind me of all kinds of images in the scripture, because that rushing water sound is how the worship that surrounds the throne of God is often described in the scriptures. Well, at least in Ezekiel and in the book of Revelation, the sound of the throne has this sound of rushing waters. And in fact, John in Revelation chapter 1 tells us that that's the very sound of the voice of Jesus. And I could imagine at that moment the word of the Lord being spoken. And then, of course, as I looked at that sparkling river, reminded me of the river of life, clear as crystal, that flows from the throne of God. And then the trees that seemed to be alive, that seemed to be not just alive, but seemed to be expressing the life that was in them through these dancing lights. I felt of the thought of the tree of life and the fruit and the leaves that are there for the healing of the nations. And I sat there in great contentment, just imagining how these images, so close together at that moment of time, were reminding me of the ultimate purpose of God, when the voice of the Lord is heard around the world, bringing peace, bringing righteousness to the nations. How the river of life will sustain the hungry and the thirsty, and how the trees and the leaves of the tree of life are for the healing of the nations. And I thought how wonderful that God displays these prophetic images to those who have eyes and ears to recognize them.